Hey, Tony. It's recording. The video, not the audio. I mean, the audio, not the video. Set up the recording when you bring it for the file for YouTube. Hi, Ileana.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm fine here driving.
Oh, okay. Be careful.
I will, but I don't want to miss the class.
Oh, you're sweet. Don't forget it's recorded so you can look at it later. No problem.
Oh, I know that, but you know, I just like to hear it when I'm fresh in the morning, still afternoon.
I know
So-
exactly what you mean.
How was the activity at ECU?
It went pretty well. We had a lot of big shots there, so I think ECU is happy about that.
Oh, okay.
I'm indifferent. I'm not much of a politician.
I got,
I don't care. That's my problem.
yeah.
But
Well, I'm glad. But you got, I mean, it's part of the funding that you need for the program. Am I
Yeah.
right?
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, so
well, that's
we-
the main thing.
Yeah, we had an
Congratulations.
undersecretary for USDA was there, Congressman Butterfield, a bunch of senior administrators from ECU.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so a whole bunch of people. I got a video of
Oh, that's
myself, so I'll post it later. If you have trouble going to sleep, you can watch it and use that to go to sleep. It's about, I think I talked for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
bragging about you all. That's all I did.
Oh, great.
Hey, Doug. Hey, Patrick. How are you? Hey, Grant.
Howdy, how y'all?
Good. Pretty good, I think. Far as I know, anyway. How about you? How you doing, Patrick?
I'm good. I heard you had a big day today.
Yeah, I had to put on a sport coat and all that kind of stuff. It was a little bit traumatizing, but I made it through.
Yeah, I had somebody was in the crowd. They said, "Hey, they're talking about you."
Yeah, I told your story of selling beef in Alaska just because I thought that would impress all the brass that was there. Maybe they give me more money. Who knows?
2 and 4.
All part of the game.
Yeah, I gone back and forth about going. I mean, be honest with you, our congressman doesn't do the best job for us. So,
Well, we got to work on him. Let's kick his ass.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, they're giving us this grant, and it's the first grant from USDA to an ECU program in many, many, many years. So I'm hoping it'll open up a little bit of awareness of our area. They actually had the guy in charge of the state of Virginia there, and some other brass. So I think it was good politically for ECU for whatever that's worth. I don't know.
Mhm.
We'll try. All you can do is swing the bat. I've learned that a long time ago.
Yep.
Hey, Kaim, how are you?
Oh, we're doing well. How about you, sir?
Good. Good. How's Opal's Candies going?
Man, I'm telling you, we're having a blessed year. And the fourth quarter is typically going to be about 40% of our growth. So I can only imagine what that may bring. So
Now, what do you attribute it to? Are you adding Harris Robinette grass-fed beef flavor to your candy or what?
no, I honestly, I think it's just recognition. I think it's
Okay.
getting out here, beating the bushes, doing the markets, doing these events, and just getting the word out and having people try it and just actually liking it. So,
No, that's fantastic. Fantastic.
but we do appreciate your class and all your insight and information. It's been a tremendous help, and we're
Oh,
looking
wow.
for the rest of it.
Thank
Yeah, no,
I'm glad, it's worth what you're paying for it. Don't forget that.
well, it's worth way more than that, but we do appreciate it and have learned a heck of a whole lot. So, thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're working on a program for the fourth quarter that you guys can take advantage of. I think will be real helpful. So I'll share some more of that as we get further along, but I'm very excited about it. We're getting some sponsorships from NC IDEA and the Department of Agriculture and NC Rural Center. We're gonna do some really cool stuff. So,
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
all right. Okay, well, that time again. So let me figure out how to do this here, and I'm going to share my screen. So today we're going to talk about mental health and entrepreneurship. And really my goal is to just introduce you to kind of the concept and particularly as it relates to entrepreneurs. And if any of you are struggling with this, I know I have in the past with mental health stuff. Don't be bashful, don't be afraid to reach out or, do anything. We can do anything we can to help. But one of the things that I learned a long time ago, I thought that if you were a successful entrepreneur and you made millions and millions of dollars, that you would be happy. And that's all it took. And I've since learned that that's not true at all. It can be true, it can be helpful. But I learned, like one story I heard, I really couldn't believe this relatively young entrepreneur. He wasn't even 40. He sold his company here in North Carolina for $348 million to a big company. And when the sale went through and it was all done, all closed up, money in the bank, all that kind of stuff, he found himself so depressed he could not get off his bed. He was on his bed for 2 weeks, could not get out of bed. He was so depressed and he had no idea why, couldn't understand it. And he shared that story with a bunch of people and I was just amazed. You would think that someone like that had figured it all out. And in fact, he had not. And so that was one of my motivations for having this section. We're gonna look at 3 stories today from entrepreneurs, including the founder of Techstars, who is a really great guy who I've only met a couple of times, Brad Feld. He's a wonderful guy, and he came up with the whole idea of Techstars. And so we're going to take a look at some of these stories, and hopefully, if any of you have concerns or worries about mental health for you or people on your team, or hell, it could even be a customer. You could be worried about my mental health. Wouldn't blame you. But the purpose of this is really just to let you know you certainly aren't alone. And there's a lot here, I think, for all of us to learn. So I'm going to start off with, hold on one second here, maybe. Hopefully I can do this right. Let me share my screen. Okay.
Well, I would say I was a pretty typical precocious kid. You know, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. My dad's a doctor, my mom's an artist. Right, there was a sense of being successful was important, and education was important, learning was important. I had a pretty deep introvert streak, so I was very comfortable externally. I was very social and had plenty of friends, and hung out and did things. But I really liked being alone reading a book. When I graduated from high school, I went from Dallas to Boston, and I went to school at MIT.
I think one of the really beautiful things about being friends first is you build this level of trust. We really knew each other and knew each other in different contexts.
I knew her well as a friend, and I found her fascinating intellectually. She was, incredibly smart, but also across a very wide range of things.
One of the things that I remember so much about college was he worked harder than anybody. And at MIT, that's saying a lot because everybody's really achievement-oriented. Everybody was the valedictorian of their class. Everybody had perfect SAT scores, and he still took twice the course load of the required course load and trained for a marathon and just really worked really, really hard. And I admired that. I admire a work ethic. So when you're friends and you admire a work ethic, that's one thing. And then in a relationship that can get to be too extreme. And we would bill 100-hour work weeks, which meant that all the administrative time and all the, sleeping time wasn't on that. But it was extreme. That was extreme.
On today's fundraising segment, we have Brad Feld.
Brad Feld,
the man who does not need an introduction.
We were very successful as a business, financially very successful. Anybody on the outside looking in would say, what's wrong with you? Like you got, you live in Boulder, Colorado, you got, nice house, you got a nice car, you got a great wife. It's easy to describe it at one level and hard at another. So the feeling for me of depression starts with what I could only describe as kind of a hole in my gut. It wasn't that I felt an emotion that was a negative emotion. I didn't feel sadness or sorrow, but it was almost the absence of joy. It's like I've got this thing missing. I want this essential element of existence I don't have in my current existence. And I'm worried I'm not going to have it again.
The real crisis moment was we were on vacation in Sedona, Arizona, and he was driving the rental car, and he said he was considering pulling into oncoming traffic. So a really serious suicidal ideation. And I made him stop the car, and we traded places, and I said, I know some things, and I've studied some things, and I've done some therapy, and I've done a lot of work, but this is way out of my league. And when we get back to Boston, you're going to get professional help.
I remember feeling periods of incredible anxiety, and I had incredible shame around the idea that I would see a psychiatrist, and incredible shame around the idea that I would take medication, incredible shame around the idea that I might actually acknowledge that I was depressed. And there were very few people that I could talk to about this. Fortunately, I could talk to Amy about it. I could talk to my business partner, Dave, who was, even though he didn't really know what to do with it at the time, was incredible in terms of just being a supportive friend and partner. And what Dave would do is he wouldn't say to me, do you want to go for a walk? He would find out when I had a free hour on my calendar. He'd poke his head in my office and say, let's go for a walk. And I'd look at my calendar, I'd see I had an hour available. I'd be like, great. And we'd go for a walk. And a lot of times we wouldn't even talk about anything. He wouldn't start a conversation. We'd just walk. And sometimes a conversation would emerge, and sometimes I'd start to talk about something, and he'd build off of it. But he didn't make the walk. He didn't make the hour that we do a loop be about me or fixing me or how am I doing or what do I need. It could turn into that, and sometimes it did. And sometimes we just walked for an hour. Even when I was in a really low point, it was an introduction and a reminder to me of something that might be good. right, that might feel like joy against this touch point. And so doing simple things like that are very powerful.
You have to take care of yourself as well. It's the put on your own oxygen mask first. And that's my friends, being outside in nature, watching the sunrise with my dogs, just really intense self-care. It's a gift for me to be strong and happy, even when he's really depressed. I think my path is to be a truth teller, and Brad is a truth teller. Trust the journey. It's gonna turn out okay. It's gonna turn out great, actually.
Y me encontré con mi negra, que estaba bien re solita. Le dije al mundo, mi hija, no sabes cuánto la quiero. Yo soy un guapo sincero, que su amor le solicita. Por eso tan solo espero el sí de su...
I've never been one to follow the same path as everybody else. I was always known as like the wild one. Ball of energy, a little sassy. I'm not afraid to take risks. In fact, I probably chase those types of adventures. So I'm originally from Colombia, South America, and I actually moved to the US when I was 6 years old. My whole family and I migrated here. My childhood's a little bit different because I grew up in a very different social class, I would say, as well. My parents just wanted a better life for us. The reason we moved to the US was actually for safety and security reasons. My grandmother was actually kidnapped when I was 5, and we spent about 8 months trying to get her back. We went a whole month actually before we knew where she was. And that was kind of the last straw for my dad and my family, as we needed to move. And it was really a matter of like having a better, brighter future. All of my siblings and I felt this feeling of we had to make our dad proud and make our mom proud, just because of everything they'd been through and everything that they had put themselves through just so that we could have a better life. Even since high school, like I was always the type of person that would stay up all night and study for tests because I had to get a good grade and make dad proud and all of that. When I moved to Denver, I met Kevin. We actually met at a bar. The first thing that really stood out to me was just how kind and generous he is. Truthfully, I fell in love with his heart first.
I remember hearing that she was going on a camping trip with my friends, and I had just met her a few weeks before. And so I packed up all my things real fast and dropped what I was doing on Saturday just to go on this camping trip to see her. She didn't have a backpack, and she was just carrying everything in her arms. But she did it with a smile, and she was laughing the whole time. Like, wow, this person is willing to do new things, even if they're beyond her comfort zone.
Kevin was there from day one. Everything really happened super fast. Like within that first year, I had met Kevin and I had met Jackie, who ended up being the co-founder at Revelar. People should have the right to feel safe. And with Revelar, you are now empowered to live your life to its fullest potential. At the time, it was just the two of us working on it, and we were kind of figuring it out from scratch. We were solely driven by passion, right? So we were, in our minds, like creating a product that, for lack of a better word, was supposed to save the world, right? Like, how do we keep people safe? We had people write in and tell us how important our product was. And I think that just made us fight harder, but also that led to a lot more stress. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure to not let people down. You know, there was definitely a lot of great things that came from it, but it did feel like I was a little bit like suffocating myself in a way. It felt like I had to keep going, like trapped a little bit. Sorry, you just made me like tear up. Sorry, you're right. I haven't processed. It's been still really hard. You know, I did lose friendships. I lost a lot of time that I could have had with people. But in that moment, I completely had prioritized the company and the mission and everything we stood for. And a lot of people say, right, like, don't take it so personally, but it's super hard because you just given so much to that company. So my co-founder was actually really good at it. She would look at me and be like, you're sick or you're tired, like, go home, take a half day, like, go rest, like, go take care of yourself. But a lot of times, like, it's hard to catch those moments for yourself.
The work world started bleeding into the home life. I would say I felt very alone. All you really want to do is see the person you love, but you also know that that person is trying to start a business, save that business, save jobs. I just knew I hadn't seen Andrea, the real person inside of there, for quite a bit of time. That person had been sucked into the laptop.
And my husband actually looked at me and he closed my computer and he was like, you need to go to bed. Like, you look exhausted, you look like you're not well. And that was a pretty big wake-up call for me, right? Like, do I need to work this late? Like, how can I be with you if I'm not with you? In a lot of situations, I was there physically, but mentally, my head was always somewhere else.
We know we're supposed to take care of ourselves. We know we're supposed to work out. We know we're supposed to eat healthy. We know we're supposed to go on walks, do art. But it simply felt like there was never time to do those things because we would be letting someone down if we took time for ourselves.
Starting a company is not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. You know, make sure that it's something that you're passionate about. You still get stressed out, right? Like, it's life. Life is meant to be a little stressful. That's how you become a better person and how you get to know yourself better. When I compare myself to how I feel now versus back then, I was definitely overworked, overstressed. I've learned that now, right? Like, how important it is to actually spend time with the things that matter the most to you, so you can continue to be your authentic self without letting stress and burnout take over.
Hi, man.
What's going on? I was born March 2nd, 1975 in Sioux City, Iowa. I was kind of a happy-go-lucky kid. And then my dad left. And after that, I started to get more quiet, more shy, and that kind of followed me throughout my childhood. So middle school, the anxiety really ratcheted up. There were fights daily, and I had kind of this disposition of, when I saw violence, it would make me sick to my stomach. I survived middle school and made it to high school and started to come a little bit more out of my shell and break out of the anxiety a little bit. I was heavily involved in things like band. I did start to play soccer, so I played on the high school soccer team. Yeah, music was kind of my thing. So we had different garage bands. I played bass because nobody else played bass. Everyone wanted to be a drummer or a guitar player, and I was like, oh, I can get a lot of playing time if I'm a bass player. Things really started to change for me, though, when I got to college.
And that's where I met Matt, was on the first day of college. We were in a small orientation group.
We were supposed to go around, use an alliterative term to introduce ourselves.
So I said, I don't know, I'm Jumpin' Janie, I guess. Even though I'm like super shy.
I couldn't quite see her. She was kind of hidden behind some other people. It got to me and I couldn't come up with anything, so I said, I'm Measly Matt.
And I'm like, who's that?
You know, we're supposed to say something that we're into, and so I said, I like to do art. And so I see this head poke around another person and say, what kind of art do you do?
He said, oh, you wouldn't understand. I thought, like, this is so on, buddy.
Like my 18-year-old self, I just want to go back and smack him. Luckily, I didn't ruin it.
It was really like I met my best friend, and we both felt like we had been searching for this person the last 18 years of our life. And about a year and a half later is when we got married.
She is strong beyond belief. She is so incredibly compassionate. You know, if love was a currency, she'd be one of the richest people on the planet.
4 years into our marriage, I think it was, he started to withdraw. He no longer wanted to do anything, wanted to sleep. He started to self-medicate with alcohol.
So the anxiety got to the point where, you know, I was afraid to go places. You know, I'd say to Janie, oh, let's just stay in.
He started doing kind of like ritualistic things, locking the door differently, turning the water on and off.
The anxiety would kind of kick in, and then I would do a ritual to try to combat the anxiety. And it would work, but it was a temporary fix. Then when I was 25, I decided I wanted to get over my fear of heights, so I was going to go skydiving. The day of our jump, I'm super excited. I was playing music on my headphones, and I couldn't wait to jump. And we get to about 3,300 feet, and the instructor opens the door, and I'm the first one to jump. So I look out, and I look down at the ground, and think, there is no way I can do this. This terror came over me. As soon as I let go, my heart felt like it was going to explode, and I couldn't breathe. What I didn't know was I was having a panic attack while skydiving. Then about a week later, I'm at work, and I'm talking to one of my coworkers, and out of the blue, I have a panic attack. It feels exactly how I felt jumping out of the plane. I'm starting to notice I'm having at least one panic attack a week. And it gets to the point where I'm starting to have a panic attack a day. Then I'm having multiple panic attacks every day. My obsessive compulsive disorder gets really out of control because one is kind of feeding the other. So I'm developing more rituals. I notice, you know, like I can't get out of the shower unless I turn the knob off a certain way.
He didn't share a lot with me. He was very withdrawn, but he did share that he was like having some thoughts that were very concerning to him.
So what my brain would tell me to do is very violent things. And me being just who I am, someone who hates violence, it was probably the most disturbing thing for me. So 2 weeks before my 27th birthday, Janie comes to me and says, I'm pregnant. And then I really start to spiral out of control.
The day I told Matt, I guess I just imagined he would scoop me up and spin me around, and it would be this super amazing time, like super special moment for us, and it wasn't. And I think that's the first time I realized there's something really wrong.
I wake up the next day. I shouldn't have gone to work, but I did. I drove myself there. I sat down at my desk, and it was a Friday, and a lot of people were coming with, you know, where are my projects? How, you know, is this going to be done next week? I was a graphic designer at the time. And I just stood up, turned around, and looked at my boss and said, I need to leave right now or I'm going to hurt someone. And she just gave me this blank stare. And she said, okay. So I walk out of the building and I call Janie and I said, I need you to meet me at the hospital.
He seemed really kind of numb and like a shell of himself. I really thought that they would take him away and he would never come back the same guy. But it was also like the best day of our lives because he was given a new chance.
The doctor who was there at the time said, we're going to put you on the right medication and we're going to monitor you the next few days. You're not going to spend the rest of your life here. You're going to get better. And that's the first time I had hope in a very long time. that alone was a huge weight that was lifted off of my shoulders. And 3 days later, I walked out of the hospital.
He was completely different the next day. He woke up with hope. There was like sparkle in his eyes that he hadn't had in years. He looked alive again.
So after the hospitalization, they set you up with a therapist and a psychiatrist. So mindfulness became a big part of how I got healthy, because through the act of meditation, sitting on a cushion, I could actually watch my thoughts. And through that process, I understood that my thoughts are not who I am. But if you just watch them passively and become an observer, they don't take control over you.
I got to witness firsthand all those layers he had been putting on himself to protect himself were starting to come off. He was cracking open and the light was shining out. And it was just really amazing.
It fundamentally changed who I am for the better. There is a stigma around mental illness, and we need to break that stigma. We need to understand, all of us together, that it's no different than having any other medical condition. It'll still bubble up. There's moments, 17 years later, that I still have anxiety, especially before I'm, to go on stage and give a speech. But I've learned that I can channel that energy. I can change it from one of fear to one of excitement, because they're kind of the same. One of the most powerful gifts you can give to yourself is to get healthy, and it's okay to ask for help.
I'm Dr. George Iliopoulos. I'm a psychiatrist.
Hi, my name's Jean Ross Marin. I'm a licensed psychologist.
My name is Janine Deannabaugh. I'm a psychologist. Entrepreneurs obviously are in a very kind of high-achieving, pressure-filled world.
And they do a fair amount of self-neglect sometimes when they're in the middle of all of that. And they keep plowing forward. They don't want to admit that there's something wrong going on.
Sometimes that's great because it inspires creativity and innovation, but sometimes it can lead to a tremendous amount of psychological stress that can accumulate and also lead to burnout. Burnout is related to anxiety and depression, but different. I think burnout is usually related to the workplace specifically, where there is this demand for work to produce, and resources kind of don't always meet the demand to be able to execute the product. So one can constantly feel behind, right? That's the essence of burnout. Now, a side effect of that burnout then, that's feeling like I can't keep up, can then be anxiety and depression. So it can kind of stem from the burnout.
There's a list of the top 5 reasons for disability. Depression is in the top 5. And, so that's right along with heart disease and diabetes. So this is a major cause of disability. 1 in 10 people will have depression in the past year, and the lifetime prevalence might be more like 20%. So 20% of people, 1 in 5, might have a major depression at some point in their life. So it's fairly common.
18.1% of adults have an anxiety disorder, and actually 33% of youth, so from ages 12 to 18, also have an anxiety disorder.
Stress and burnout can impact all areas of life. Some of the earliest signs are very kind of subtle, innocuous things like difficulty sleeping. And that could get normalized because many of us have difficulty sleeping at different times. But when it is chronic, pervasive, that is certainly a sign. Distracted or unable to really focus and concentrate to drive tasks to execution. Difficulty in interpersonal relationships. A lack of ease or even joy in relationships that maybe was present before.
In a depressive episode, you have, for a significant period of time, a depressed mood, you're sad, you're down in the dumps, you're irritable, you're anxious. And a big feature in depression is a word called anhedonia. Anhedonia is an inability to experience pleasure. And that's hedonism is pleasure, anhedonia is without pleasure. And that's an important thing that humans need. It's what drives us forward, helps us to make decisions, go towards goals. And if nothing feels good, it can be really hard to push yourself forward. Depression can also be associated with difficulty with proper nutrition and eating. And some people just stop eating and lose a significant amount of weight. They'll complain about things like, I can't concentrate. I don't have the energy level that I used to have. Definitely a tendency to be really self-deprecating. I'm no good. I'm worthless. I can't do this. I might as well give up. Things like that can come up.
The difference between normal stress and anxiety is really about the level of impact. If it's interfering with your ability to live, love, laugh, and learn. There's all sorts of very, very physical symptoms. You feel like you need to run away or maybe fight, or you actually freeze. It's your body getting you ready for fight or flight. They have a lot of stomach aches or headaches. Or somebody might feel like they can't focus, they feel kind of jittery, they feel overwhelmed. Some people might have full-on panic attacks that literally feel like you're having a heart attack.
There really is stigma associated with mental health issues. We don't talk about things like this. You have to be tough and on top of things, and you can't show weakness or admit weakness at work.
There is no shame in being burnt out. I think there's such a cultural norm, particularly in the entrepreneurial community, of keep going. There's work to do. This isn't that big of a deal. I've got this, I can keep going. So I think it really is the minimization or denial. I think friends, family, partners are hesitant to intervene with someone with burnout for fear of coming across as judgmental. And so the partner or friend doesn't want to contribute to the stress by calling out the stress. So often it's a cycle that feeds upon itself, where if nobody's kind of talking about it, the person isn't also getting any help. All we want to do is invite balance. So rather than talk about how hard they're working, how they're never there, maybe we invite, I'd love to have lunch with you today. Is there any way you could meet me for an hour?
I think if you're genuine in your care and concern, I think that's, that comes across, and that's what's honest. You're being honest. You're not being too intrusive. Trust your judgment. Trust yourself. If you're really worried about this person, especially if you're worried about safety, then it's important to share that responsibility. Talk to people around you. And sometimes you might even need to call the authorities if you're truly worried that you're not going to see that person the next day.
Because it is really helpful to people to feel like somebody cares about them. They're not alone, that you're normalizing it. Like you're approaching this like you would approach other things. Because this is not our standard practice, it kind of goes against social norms, and it feels like we're being intrusive or nosy, to remind yourself that it's actually helpful.
I think often the key is to admit that we're not perfect, that we might be struggling, and show vulnerability in that way, so that we can then actually replenish ourselves by admitting that. Then if we do that and we start rebalancing things, chances are we're going to come back to our work life in even more of a powerful way. But oftentimes we have to first admit that what we might be doing isn't working.
Good things can come out of situations where people have been in really dark places. And, human history is just full of stories just like that. And you can be the next story like that. And if you find that you're really struggling, go get help and work on it, and you'll get better.
Pretty good stuff, huh?
Yes.
Anybody wanna chat about impressions or experiences? Or I'm certainly no shrink, and I'm not trying to shrink anybody. I'm just want to bring up the subject of mental health, particularly for entrepreneurs. So if anybody wants to share or talk about stuff they've learned, that'd be great.
I find this a very interesting topic, because they said it right. Entrepreneurs are high strung. We don't think like everybody else, and it's hard to relate to other people, especially other people who most of them work for somebody. So like they get a paycheck regardless of the fact they're not responsible for that paycheck. And so it's really difficult to talk things through, problems through with your friends. But then like from the flip side, from an agriculture's perspective, from an entrepreneur's perspective, there's a lot of things in our control. Of course, it's market, customers, there's things that aren't in our control. But on top of that, from like our standpoint, I have many other things on top of that aren't in our control, like weather or breeding or whatever, production. In 21 years that we've been in business, we have to build a model, then try to find partners to work within the different segments of the model, could not find it, build it, then we had to bring in ourselves on top of all these hurricanes, all these COVID, whatever. And so a couple things that we did, that I personally did, because in agriculture, we're like most high strung in terms of suicide rates and stuff like that. So a couple of things that I did. Number one, I found me 3 people that are in the same business as me that, but we're not competitors, we're friends. And so I have 3 individuals that I can reach out and call, and they can reach out and call, or we've even gotten on planes and seen each other. So like, so that's the first thing, was find like-minded people. The second thing is open communication with my family. So like I have 2 kids, relatively young, one's in grad school and college, and the other one's graduating high school. But I had open communication with my family and everything that's going on day to day, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so there was understanding, because half of our problem, I believe, is the normal stress, and the other half of the problem is the family stress that piled onto it. And so with their understanding of what things were going on, allowed for them to say, I don't need to screw with daddy today, and then kind of back off. Then they pick and choose when they mess with me. So having communication with the family. Third thing was having peace of mind. If I did everything that I possibly could do to save something or to do something and it still didn't work, I had the peace of mind that I did everything I possibly could do. The joke in our house, in our life, and what gives me really peace of mind is that if God decides today that I am not, that it's time for me to move on, and he closes the doors, I'm fine flipping burgers at McDonald's for the rest of my life. Having that peace of mind gives you a scary place in doing your business, but it also gives you the confidence in doing the business. And then the fourth thing was, my family, like I said, you have a business, you can find a staff member to, see your business, like watch your business for a couple of days, or, maybe you just close up for a couple of days. And our deal is we have live animals. So like there's no abilities to have those breaks assigned. And so what would happen is that in our family, the joke was we had to-go bags where I would make time to just get away for the night. It didn't matter where. We would just go somewhere for the night. My family was great with that concept. We still did other trips and stuff, but okay, dad is all the time immersed in his business, but I know whenever he gets a break and whenever he can see a break, even just for one night, and it's just me and them. And so that, but that also was my detox to step away. And so we employed those tactics into ourselves, into our family, into our business, and that they know that, at the end of the day, like I'll give you an example. My son had an event at NC State. I was, he had a tour at NC State, to deal with beforehand. He was not upset that I wasn't there for the tour because circumstances just wasn't going to allow for the timing of it to happen. But he also knew as soon as I could get there, I'm going to be there. And I was there for him all weekend. Having that knowledge and that understanding in the reality, because like I said, I mean, I've seen, other entrepreneurs have that stress from the family standpoint, that's pressure on top of pressure. And so anyways, those are the things that, that we employ in our business from a mental health standpoint. But the biggest of all is finding those couple people, not a bunch of people. Like I said, I have 3. And once a month, once a month we talk all collectively. We all 3 know each other. But individually, even if we're just having a blow up at work in the office, I'd step away. Hey, I pick up the phone. Dude, you ain't going to believe this. And it allows me a venting place to go. But the same thing with them, from them to me. So anyhow,
thank you. That's there is so much there. I don't even know where to start, but the big thing is you don't hide it. You don't make it something that's bad to address, right? You make it relevant, include the family, you have resources with your friends. And I think what I hear in your comments is really open lines of communication and people kind of knowing what the deal is instead of being surprised or not knowing. So my hat's off to you, Patrick. That's inspirational to me as an entrepreneur who've made all of the mistakes that these people in these videos talked about. So I respect that. Anyone else want to chime in on this subject or thoughts on how you deal with some of the stuff in your operation?
Yes, this is Ruth.
Hey, Ruth.
It was really a meaningful video for me. My late husband, was an entrepreneur, and I saw a lot of the ups and downs that these people are talking about in the videos that he went through in the various businesses that we had. And so now I have a serious boyfriend, and he is a wonderful counterbalance to the stresses that I have as an entrepreneur. So for example, when I go crazy because I can't get the jars that I need, or the lids don't fit, or they don't match, or the whatevers, he kind of is really, he's very good about talking about what is important in the long run. What is, the long-term impact that you don't like this jar, for example, and he's very frequently right that actually I can turn it into an advantage. And so I think it's very important, as Patrick just said, to have somebody that can be a counterbalance and listen to you and remind you of these things that are so frustrating and seem so enormous as an entrepreneur that in the scope of things, they really are not that big of a deal.
That's I love that. And that's very similar to what Patrick said. He uses the 3 friends in a similar way to really get perspective from them. And they know him so well, they feel like they can say, look, asshole, this is what you need to do. That's real helpful. And thank you, Ruth, for sharing that. Anyone else want to jump in here? Okay.
Well, for me, one of the things that has helped me is actually going to see a mental health professional, and it's not as bad as what people think it might be as far as perceptions or stigma or whatever you want to attach to it. Basically, it's just somebody that guides you at getting your thoughts in order and feelings in order to function like you should be.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, and I think what we're seeing in society as a whole, at least in some aspects, in the sports world, we've seen that young tennis woman player, can't think of her name, who bailed out of one of the golf or one of the tennis tournaments because of mental health issues, and then we saw the gymnasts in the Olympics, kind of just lay it all on the line. And I think historically that's unprecedented. And so I think the younger generation maybe is starting to be more open, and people are not, some people are upset, but the majority of people accept it and are applauding these efforts to treat these things. Because let's face it, a mental problem, emotional problem, whatever you want to call it, can be every bit as deadly as cancer or any other illness, especially if it's not treated right or treated at all. So I appreciate everyone sharing that. Anyone else want to chime in at this point? Stuff that's worked for you or learnings that you've had in this subject area? One thing I want to point out in the videos that we just saw, all of these people were wildly successful financially from their entrepreneurship activities. They don't cover it there, but everyone in those videos hit it really big. And even with that, you could see the struggles that they had and the kind of the price that they paid. So, everyone deals with this at some level. So I encourage any of you, if anybody have any concerns or thoughts or want connections to resources, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to play that role and suggest things that may work for you. Okay, well, that's what I have for today. Appreciate everybody. We're going to have a bunch of guest speakers coming up, and boy, you're going to love them. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be some really interesting people I think you're going to enjoy as we kind of get to the tail end of this program. But I do want to encourage all of you to, if you have questions for me or thoughts or ideas or feedback, tomorrow I'm going to kind of host an Ask Me Anything, an AMA. That's going to be our class. So you can come at me with your concerns, your praise, your damnation, whatever it is. I'd love to hear what's on your mind and ways you think we might be able to improve this program from your perspective. We really cherish and value that feedback. So that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. And that's all I got for today. So I bid you adieu until tomorrow, and have a good day. See y'all.